Welcome back to the channel Valuable Coins HD, coin enthusiasts and collectors. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating piece of US coinage that might be hiding in your collection or even your pocket change right now, the 1975 Jefferson Nickel. At first glance, this may seem like just another nickel, but stick around because this coin could be worth far more than its face value, and we're going to explain exactly why. The year 1975 wasn't just significant because of the usual historical events happening around the world, it was also a year where something interesting happened at the US Mint. While the country was going about its usual business, millions of Jefferson nickels were being struck, many of which would enter everyday circulation, becoming an integral part of the currency of the time. However, among those millions, some of them have developed a fascinating reputation in the world of coin collecting due to rare minting errors and unique qualities. And trust me, those qualities could make this coin worth far more than its 5-cent value. When it comes to coins, rarity is king. So, what makes the 1975 Jefferson Nickel so rare and valuable? Well, let's start with the minting errors that can occur during the production process. The truth is, mistakes can happen when minting coins, and it's these mistakes that can create coins with unique characteristics that collectors are willing to pay top dollar for. The 1975 Jefferson Nickel has some errors that make it incredibly valuable to collectors who know what to look for. And if you're lucky enough to have one of these rarities, you could be sitting on a small fortune. One of the most sought-after errors in the 1975 Jefferson Nickel is the double die error. This occurs when the coin is struck by the die more than once, resulting in a duplication of the design. So, if you're looking at your 1975 nickel and you notice that the word "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" seems doubled or blurred, you might have just stumbled upon a double die error. These coins are particularly valuable because of their rarity and unique appearance. In the world of coin collecting, a double die error is considered a serious find, and if it's on a 1975 nickel, you could be looking at a much higher value than you'd expect. But that's not all. There's another error that can occur, and that's the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is misaligned during the minting process, resulting in part of the design being off-center or missing altogether. Imagine a nickel where part of Thomas Jefferson's portrait is cut off, or the date is shifted to one side. These off-center strikes are particularly interesting to collectors because no two are alike. Each off-center strike is unique, and that's what makes them so special. If you happen to find a 1975 nickel with this kind of error, it could be worth far more than just 5 cents. Another error that can make a 1975 Jefferson nickel even more valuable is the clipped planchet error. This occurs when the metal blank used to make the coin isn't properly cut before the minting process begins, causing a portion of the coin to be missing. This could leave part of the design off-center or give the coin a jagged or irregular edge. These kinds of coins stand out because they're distinctive, and collectors often seek them out specifically because of their uniqueness. A clipped planchet error is a rare find and can make your 1975 nickel a real treasure. Now, let's talk about condition. In the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. The better the condition of the coin, the more valuable it becomes. A 1975 nickel in uncirculated condition is worth far more than a coin that's been heavily circulated, scratched, or worn down. Coins that have been kept in pristine condition, free from any damage or discoloration, are much rarer and therefore much more valuable. So, if you've got a 1975 Jefferson nickel that's in excellent shape, you're already ahead of the game. So, how much could a 1975 Jefferson nickel be worth? Well, if you've got a coin with one of those rare minting errors, like a double die, off-center strike, or clipped planchet, combined with excellent condition, then you could be looking at a coin worth a staggering $51,000. Yes, you heard that right, $51,000 for a single 1975 Jefferson nickel. While this kind of value isn't the norm for every 1975 nickel, it goes to show just how much these rare and error-filled coins can be worth when they're in the right condition and have the right characteristics. Of course, not every 1975 Jefferson nickel will fetch this kind of price. But it's important to remember that rarity, error, and condition all play a huge role in determining the value of a coin. If you're lucky enough to find a 1975 nickel with one of these minting errors, or if you happen to have one in excellent condition, you might want to get it appraised by a professional. There's always the chance you could be holding on to a rare piece of history. Coin collecting is a thrilling hobby because you never know what you might find hidden in your spare change or tucked away in an old coin jar. The 1975 Jefferson Nickel is a perfect example of how an everyday coin can become a valuable collector's item, and with the right error or condition, it could be worth a small fortune. Today, we're diving deep into the world of one of the most fascinating coins in U.S. history, the 1971 Jefferson Nickel. At first glance, this may seem like just another common nickel, but trust me, there's so much more to this coin than meets the eye. It's time to uncover the secrets behind this coin's surprising value and the errors that make it a true collector's gem. 1971 was a pivotal year in U.S. history. The country was in the midst of significant cultural and political shifts, and while all of that was happening, the U.S. Mint was busy at work producing millions of coins, including the 5-cent Jefferson nickel. But not all of these nickels were destined for the ordinary life of everyday pocket change. Some of them were made with unique characteristics and errors that would go on to make them worth far more than just 5 cents. So, what makes the 1971 Jefferson nickel so special? Let's start with one of the most exciting aspects of coin collecting: minting errors. While it might sound surprising, mistakes made during the minting process can actually turn a seemingly ordinary coin into something rare and incredibly valuable. And the 1971 nickel has a few unique errors that could mean you're holding onto a small treasure. One of the most desirable errors collectors look for in the 1971 Jefferson nickel is the double die error. This happens when the coin is struck more than once by the same die, resulting in the design being duplicated or doubled. For example, the word "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" might appear twice, or Thomas Jefferson's portrait could look slightly misaligned, giving the impression that it's been struck twice. These double die errors are rare and highly sought after, as they create a distinctive and eye-catching appearance on the coin. If you find a 1971 Jefferson nickel with this error, you could be looking at something worth far more than the 5-cent face value, but that's not the only error to look out for. There's also the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin isn't properly aligned in the minting machine, which can cause parts of the design to be shifted or missing entirely. Imagine looking at your 1971 nickel and noticing that the date is slightly off-center or part of Jefferson's image is cut off. Off-center strikes are rare and each one is unique, making them incredibly attractive to collectors. These coins are special because they don't look like any other standard coin, and that uniqueness is what can drive up their value. Another exciting error you should keep an eye out for is the clipped planchet error. This happens when the metal blank that's used to mint the coin is improperly cut before it's struck. As a result, part of the design may be missing, or the coin may have a jagged or uneven edge. A clipped planchet coin stands out from the rest, and collectors love them because they're so distinctive. If your 1971 Jefferson nickel has a clipped planchet error, you could be holding onto something very valuable. While minting errors are certainly the primary factor that can make a 1971 Jefferson nickel valuable, the condition of the coin is just as important. A coin in excellent, uncirculated condition can be worth much more than one that has been heavily circulated. Coins that have been kept in pristine condition, free from scratches, discoloration, or wear, are rare, and they fetch much higher prices in the collector's market. So if you've managed to keep your 1971 nickel in perfect condition, congratulations, you may already have a valuable coin on your hands. Now, you're probably wondering how much a 1971 Jefferson nickel could actually be worth. Well, here's the exciting part: if you happen to find one of these rare coins with a significant minting error, or if you have one in pristine, uncirculated condition, it could be worth a jaw-dropping $54,000. That's right, $54,000 for a single 1971 Jefferson nickel. It's not every day you come across a coin that could fetch such a hefty sum, but with the right error and condition, this seemingly ordinary nickel could become an extraordinary collectible. Of course, not every 1971 Jefferson nickel will reach that price. But with the right combination of rarity, error, and condition, this coin could be a true treasure. It's a reminder that sometimes, the value of a coin isn't just in its face value, but in the unique characteristics that make it special. So, how can you tell if your 1971 Jefferson nickel is worth more than just 5 cents? Start by looking for those minting errors. Check carefully for double die errors, off-center strikes, and clipped planchets. If your coin has any of these errors, it's worth getting it appraised by a professional coin dealer or appraiser. Even if you don't find any minting errors, if your 1971 nickel is in excellent condition, it could still be worth more than you think. Coin collecting is a fascinating hobby because you never know what treasures might be hiding in your pocket change or tucked away in your collection. The 1971 Jefferson nickel is a perfect example of how a small mistake in the minting process or a well-preserved coin can turn an ordinary nickel into something extraordinary. Today we're diving into one of the most exciting coins in the history of U.S. currency, the 1964 Jefferson nickel. Now, at first glance, this may seem like just another nickel from your pocket change, but trust me, this coin has some serious potential. If you've got one of these rare gems lying around, you could be sitting on something that's worth a lot more than 5 cents. The year 1964 was an interesting one in American history, as it marked the final year that the U.S. Mint struck coins with silver content in the same quantities that were used in earlier decades. But, beyond its historical significance, there's something about the 1964 Jefferson nickel that has captured the attention of coin collectors for decades. So, let's take a deeper look at this fascinating coin and explore exactly why it's become such a prized item in the coin world. First off, what makes the 1964 Jefferson nickel unique? It's the combination of its historical context, rarity, and certain minting errors that have made this coin so valuable. Although the design of the nickel itself remained unchanged for many years, the 1964 version stands out for a few key reasons. One of the most exciting factors that have driven the value of this coin up is the minting errors that occurred during the production process. Errors like these are not common, but when they do happen, they can drastically increase a coin's value. So, let's break down some of the minting errors that have caused the 1964 Jefferson nickel to be in high demand. First, let's talk about the double die error. This happens when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned or malfunctions, causing the design to appear doubled on the coin. So, imagine looking at the word Liberty or In God We Trust and seeing the letters duplicated or blurred. This doubling can be quite noticeable, and it's one of the most sought-after errors in the world of coin collecting. A 1964 Jefferson nickel with a double die error can command a serious premium, especially if the doubling is prominent and clearly visible. Next up, we have the off-center strike. This error occurs when the coin is not properly aligned with the press, resulting in the design being off-center. In the case of the 1964 Jefferson nickel, this could mean that part of Thomas Jefferson's image, the date, or the mint mark is missing, or the design is shifted to one side. Off-center strikes are incredibly unique because each one is different, and their rarity makes them highly valuable. If you come across a 1964 Jefferson nickel with an off-center strike, you could have a true collector's item on your hands. Another fascinating error to look out for is the clipped planchet error. This happens when the metal blank used to make the coin isn't properly cut before it's struck, resulting in a part of the coin being missing or distorted. In the case of the 1964 Jefferson nickel, this could mean a jagged edge or a section of the design being cut off. These types of errors are rare and highly collectible, as they give the coin a distinctive, one-of-a-kind appearance. If your 1964 nickel has a clipped planchet, it's definitely worth taking a closer look, as it could fetch a higher price than a standard, error-free coin. Now, let's talk about the condition of the coin. In the world of coin collecting, the better the condition, the more valuable the coin. A 1964 Jefferson nickel that's in pristine, uncirculated condition is much more valuable than one that's been heavily circulated or worn down. Coins with clean surfaces, sharp details, and no significant scratches or discoloration are highly prized. So, if you happen to have a 1964 nickel that's been well preserved over the years, it could already be worth more than the typical 5-cent value. All of these factors, the rarity of minting errors, the historical context of the coin, and its condition, combine to make the 1964 Jefferson nickel an incredibly valuable and desirable item in the coin world. But just how much is it worth? Well, if you're lucky enough to find a 1964 Jefferson nickel with a significant minting error, or if you have one in exceptional condition, it could be worth an eye-popping $64,000. Yes, you heard that right, $64,000 for a single 1964 Jefferson nickel. Of course, not every 1964 nickel will fetch that kind of price, but it's a great reminder of how much a coin's value can increase depending on its rarity and the errors it may carry. A 1964 Jefferson nickel with a clear minting error, in good condition, is a collector's dream, and the value can skyrocket when it's in the right hands. So, how can you tell if your 1964 Jefferson nickel is worth more than just 5 cents? Start by inspecting the coin closely. Look for any signs of minting errors like double die, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets. If you find any of these, get the coin appraised by a professional dealer who can give you an accurate estimate of its value. Even if you don't find an error, but the coin is in pristine, uncirculated condition, it may still be worth more than its face value. Coin collecting is a thrilling hobby because there's always the chance of finding a hidden gem among your coins. The 1964 Jefferson nickel is a perfect example of how an ordinary coin can transform into a rare and valuable collectible, thanks to the errors and rarity that make it stand out from the rest. Whether you're a seasoned collector or a casual coin enthusiast, this nickel is definitely one to keep an eye out for. Today's video is one you absolutely don't want to miss. We're diving into a coin that's often overlooked but could be worth a fortune, the 1972 Jefferson nickel. Yes, you heard that right. This seemingly ordinary coin could be hiding some serious value, and we're here to show you why it's become such a sought-after item in the world of coin collecting. The 1972 Jefferson nickel is often just another nickel from the 70s for most people. After all, it's only 5 cents, and many people are quick to dismiss coins like this. But for those in the know, this particular nickel is more than meets the eye. With certain rare errors and other factors in play, the 1972 Jefferson nickel has become an incredibly valuable coin for collectors. So, let's break down exactly what makes this coin special, why it's worth paying attention to, and how you can identify if you have a rare one that could fetch a huge price. First, let's set the scene. 1972 was a year of transformation in the United States, with significant cultural and political changes shaping the nation. While all this was going on, the U.S. Mint was busy churning out millions of coins, including the famous Jefferson nickel. While the design remained the same as previous years, with Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, there was something different about the 1972 Jefferson nickel. A few lucky finds from this year turned out to have minting errors that make them valuable. One of the most exciting errors that collectors are looking for in the 1972 Jefferson nickel is the double die error. This occurs when the coin is struck more than once by the same die, causing the design to appear doubled or slightly misaligned. Imagine looking at your nickel and noticing that the word "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" seems to be doubled. The portrait of Jefferson might look a little blurry or duplicated. This doubling is often easy to spot and can increase the value of the coin dramatically. A 1972 Jefferson nickel with a pronounced double die error can be a real treasure for collectors, and it's one of the main reasons why this coin is so highly sought after. But that's not all. Another exciting error that has been found on some 1972 Jefferson nickels is the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin is not properly aligned when it's being struck, which results in part of the design being missing or shifted to one side. You might notice that some details on the coin, like Jefferson's portrait or the date, are partially or completely off-center. Off-center strikes are a collector's dream because each one is unique. There's no other coin exactly like it, and that rarity makes them highly valuable. If you happen to find a 1972 nickel that's been struck off-center, you could be holding on to a valuable piece of history. Another minting error to keep your eye out for is the clipped planchet error. This happens when the metal blank that the coin is made from isn't properly cut, resulting in a coin that has a portion of its design missing or a jagged, uneven edge. Clipped planchet coins stand out because of their unusual appearance, and collectors are often willing to pay a premium for them because they are so rare and visually distinctive. If you have a 1972 Jefferson nickel with this kind of error, you could have a highly valuable coin on your hands. but it's not just the errors that make the 1972 Jefferson nickel worth more than its face value. Condition is another key factor in determining a coin's value. In the world of coin collecting, the better the condition, the more valuable the coin. A 1972 Jefferson nickel that's in mint condition, without any wear, scratches, or discoloration, can be worth far more than a well-worn one. So, if you've got a nickel from 1972 that's been well preserved and shows little to no signs of wear, it could be worth a significant amount of money. Now, you may be wondering just how much a 1972 Jefferson nickel could actually be worth if it has one of these rare errors or is in excellent condition. The answer might surprise you. This humble nickel can fetch a mind-blowing $54,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $54,000 for a single 1972 Jefferson nickel. Of course, not every 1972 nickel will be worth that much, but if you happen to find one with a prominent minting error or if it's in exceptional condition, you could be holding on to a coin worth far more than just 5 cents. How do you know if your 1972 nickel could be worth that much? Start by inspecting the coin closely for any errors like double die, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets. If you find any of these errors, it's time to take your coin to a professional appraiser or coin dealer for an evaluation. Even if you don't find an error but your coin is in outstanding condition, it could still be worth a lot more than face value. Coin collecting is an exciting journey because you never know when you might stumble upon a hidden treasure. The 1972 Jefferson nickel is the perfect example of how a simple mistake during the minting process or a well-preserved coin can turn an ordinary nickel into something extraordinary. For collectors, this nickel is a prime example of how rarity, error, and condition can combine to make a coin worth thousands of dollars. So, the next time you're flipping through your change, take a second look at your 1972 nickels. You might just have a rare find on your hands, and who knows? You could be holding onto a coin worth $54,000. Today we have something truly exciting to talk about, one of the most fascinating and valuable coins you might have never even noticed in your pocket change. We're diving into the world of the 1966 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, this may seem like just another regular nickel, but let me tell you, there's more to this coin than meets the eye. If you've got a 1966 Jefferson nickel in your collection, especially one with a certain rare error, you could be holding on to something that could be worth a small fortune. So, sit back and get ready to discover why this seemingly ordinary nickel is a hidden treasure in the world of coin collecting. 1966 was an interesting year in American history. While the country was undergoing significant changes in society and politics, the U.S. Mint was busy producing millions of coins, including the Jefferson nickel. The design of the coin, featuring Thomas Jefferson on the front and Monticello on the reverse, had been in use since 1938. But while the design stayed the same, the 1966 Jefferson nickel turned out to be anything but ordinary. With a little bit of luck, the 1966 nickel could turn out to be an incredibly rare and valuable coin. So, what makes the 1966 Jefferson nickel so special, and why has it become a hot commodity among collectors? Well, there are a few key factors that make this particular coin worth taking a closer look. The most exciting reason is the minting errors that happened during production. Minting errors are incredibly valuable in the world of coin collecting because they happen by chance, making the coin unique and extremely rare. Let's dive into a couple of the minting errors that have caused the 1966 Jefferson nickel to soar in value. The first error to keep an eye out for is the double die error. This is one of the most sought-after types of errors among collectors. It happens when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned or has a flaw, which results in the design being struck twice. This causes the image on the coin to appear doubled or blurry. In the case of the 1966 Jefferson nickel, this means you might see the word Liberty or In God We Trust appear twice, or even Thomas Jefferson's portrait looking slightly duplicated. Double die errors are rare, and the more pronounced the doubling, the more valuable the coin becomes. If you happen to find a 1966 Jefferson nickel with a noticeable double die error, you could have a rare and valuable coin on your hands. Another error that makes the 1966 Jefferson nickel worth more than face value is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not aligned properly when it's struck by the die, causing the design to be shifted to one side. As a result, part of the design, whether it's the date, Thomas Jefferson's portrait, or the word Liberty, could be partially or completely missing from the coin. Off-center strikes are highly collectible because they're one of a kind, and no two coins with this error are ever exactly alike. If you find a 1966 Jefferson nickel with an off-center strike, it's a unique piece that could fetch a premium price. Then there's the clipped planchet error. This occurs when the metal blank that the coin is made from isn't properly cut before it's struck. As a result, part of the coin is missing, and you'll often notice a jagged or uneven edge. If you find a 1966 Jefferson nickel with a clipped planchet, you'll have a coin that looks very different from a typical nickel. These errors are extremely rare, and collectors will pay top dollar for coins with clipped planchets because they're visually distinctive and one of a kind. Now, beyond the minting errors, the condition of the coin plays a huge role in determining its value. Like all coins, the better the condition, the more valuable it is. A 1966 Jefferson nickel that's been well preserved and shows little to no signs of wear will be much more valuable than one that has been heavily circulated. If you happen to have an uncirculated 1966 Jefferson nickel, meaning it looks almost as good as it did the day it was minted, you could be looking at a valuable coin that could be worth significantly more than face value. Now, let's talk about the million-dollar question. Just how much could a 1966 Jefferson nickel with a minting error or in perfect condition be worth? Well, if you're lucky enough to find a 1966 Jefferson nickel with a noticeable error, or if you have one in pristine, uncirculated condition, it could be worth as much as $58,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $58,000 for a single 1966 Jefferson nickel. Of course, not every 1966 nickel will be worth that much, but if yours has the right error or is in amazing condition, it could be worth far more than you ever imagined. So, how do you know if your 1966 nickel could be worth that kind of money? Start by carefully inspecting the coin. Look for any signs of errors, like double die, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets. If you see any of these, it's time to get the coin appraised by a professional. Even if your coin doesn't have any minting errors, if it's in excellent condition, it could still be worth a significant amount more than its face value. The world of coin collecting is full of surprises, and the 1966 Jefferson nickel is a prime example of how a simple mistake during the minting process can turn an ordinary coin into a rare and valuable collectible. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just getting started, this nickel is definitely one to keep an eye out for. The combination of minting errors and the coin's condition can make it an exciting find, and you never know when you might discover a hidden gem. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of one of the most intriguing and valuable nickels you might have never thought twice about. That's right, we're talking about the 1985 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, this coin may look like any other regular nickel you might find in your pocket, but let me tell you, it could hold a secret that could make you thousands of dollars richer. Stick around to discover why the 1985 Jefferson nickel is so special, and how this seemingly ordinary coin could turn out to be worth far more than you'd ever expect. 1985 was a year that marked some important events in American history, but at the U.S. Mint, the focus was on producing coins that would circulate for years to come. The Jefferson nickel was already a staple in American currency, featuring the well-known portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and an image of Jefferson's home, Monticello, on the reverse. While the design had been in place for decades by this point, 1985 turned out to be a year where some of these nickels carried unexpected surprises that have made them highly sought after by coin collectors around the world. Now, you may be wondering, what makes the 1985 Jefferson nickel so valuable? Well, it all comes down to a few key factors that contribute to its rarity and worth in the coin collecting world. The first major factor to consider is the condition of the coin. As with any coin, the better the condition, the more valuable it becomes. Most 1985 Jefferson nickels you find are probably worn and heavily circulated, but if you happen to find one in excellent or uncirculated condition, you've already got a rare gem. Uncirculated coins are those that were never used in everyday transactions and are in near-perfect condition. These are highly prized by collectors because they're much harder to find. A pristine 1985 nickel could already be worth much more than its 5-cent face value, but what really makes the 1985 Jefferson nickel stand out is the possibility of minting errors. Minting errors are what turn an otherwise regular coin into a rare and valuable collectible. Errors in the minting process are unpredictable, but when they happen, they can make a coin worth a small fortune. Some of the most sought-after minting errors that you could find in a 1985 Jefferson nickel are double die errors, off-center strikes, and clipped planchet errors. Let's talk about the double die error first. A double die error occurs when the die used to stamp the coin is misaligned, which results in the design being stamped twice, making the image appear blurry or doubled. On a 1985 Jefferson nickel, this could mean that the word Liberty or even the date 1985 might appear twice. The more pronounced and obvious the doubling, the more valuable the coin becomes. This type of error is rare and highly collectible, and if you're lucky enough to come across a 1985 Jefferson nickel with a noticeable double die error, you could be holding onto a coin worth significantly more than its face value. Next, we have the off-center strike. This error happens when the coin is misaligned in the press during minting. As a result, part of the coin's design, whether it's part of Jefferson's portrait or the date, is cut off or misaligned. An off-center strike creates a unique look, and because no two off-center coins are ever exactly alike, they become highly collectible. A 1985 Jefferson nickel with an off-center strike could be a rare find that's worth much more than its 5-cent face value. Another error to look out for is the clipped planchet. This occurs when the metal planchet, the blank piece of metal that the coin is struck from, isn't properly cut, resulting in a portion of the coin being missing. You'll often notice a jagged or uneven edge where the metal is missing. Clipped planchet errors are fascinating to collectors because they give the coin a distinctive look, and they're incredibly rare. A 1985 Jefferson nickel with this error would definitely stand out in a collection and could be worth far more than its original value. Now, let's talk about the potential value of these rare and error-filled 1985 Jefferson nickels. While not every 1985 nickel will be worth a fortune, those that feature minting errors or are in uncirculated condition could fetch a pretty penny. In fact, depending on the rarity of the error and the coin's condition, a 1985 Jefferson nickel could be worth as much as $46,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $46,000 for a single 1985 nickel. Of course, you're probably not going to find one of these coins lying around in your pocket change every day, but it's a great reminder that coins, even ones that seem ordinary at first, can become valuable over time. The world of coin collecting is filled with stories of hidden treasures, and the 1985 Jefferson nickel is one such story. With the potential for minting errors and the possibility of finding a coin in mint condition, this nickel holds a certain mystique for collectors. If you come across a 1985 Jefferson nickel, be sure to inspect it carefully for any signs of errors or wear. And if you're lucky enough to find one with an error or in near-perfect condition, don't hesitate to get it appraised. You might just be holding onto a rare coin worth thousands of dollars. So, the next time you're sorting through your change, keep an eye out for the 1985 Jefferson nickel. You never know, it could be worth $46,000. Coin collecting is all about finding those hidden gems, and who knows, the next one could be right in your pocket. Today, we have an exciting and rare coin to talk about, the 1943 Jefferson nickel. Now, you might be thinking, a 1943 nickel? That's just another coin from World War II, right? Well, you're about to learn why this particular nickel is anything but ordinary. In fact, some of these 1943 Jefferson nickels are so rare and so special that they can be worth an incredible amount of money, so stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll be looking at your change a lot differently. So let's set the stage. The year is 1943. The United States is in the midst of World War II, and the country's economy is being shaped by the war effort. In fact, during this time, the U.S. Mint made a significant change to its coin production in order to conserve copper for the war. The 1943 Lincoln pennies, for example, were famously struck in steel rather than the usual copper. But while the 1943 penny went through this dramatic change, the 1943 Jefferson nickel is where things get really interesting for coin collectors. Now, when you think of a nickel, you probably imagine the standard 5-cent coin, which features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his home, Monticello, on the reverse. However, the 1943 Jefferson nickel has a fascinating backstory. You see, during this time, the U.S. Mint faced a shortage of nickel as the demand for metals for the war effort was at an all-time high. In an effort to conserve nickel, the Mint struck a small number of these 1943 nickels using a combination of silver, copper, and manganese instead of the typical nickel alloy. This change in composition led to a small number of coins being made that are now extremely rare and highly valuable, but here's the kicker: finding one of these rare 1943 Jefferson nickels is incredibly difficult. Most of the coins from that year were struck with the standard nickel composition, and only a very limited number of these silver-colored versions made it into circulation. Over the years, they've become a holy grail for coin collectors. Why? Because of their rarity and their historical significance. When you're holding a 1943 Jefferson nickel that's made of this unique metal mix, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a piece of history, but it doesn't end there. The value of a 1943 Jefferson nickel can skyrocket due to mint errors. Mint errors are a major reason why some coins become so valuable. Whether it's a mistake during the minting process or a misaligned die, these errors create one-of-a-kind coins that collectors go crazy for. For example, a common mint error you might find on a 1943 Jefferson nickel is a double die error. This occurs when the coin's design is struck more than once, creating a double image. If you find a 1943 Jefferson nickel with a double die error, it's going to be a lot more valuable than a regular 1943 nickel. Another error to look out for is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet, the metal disc that the coin is stamped from, is not properly centered in the press. As a result, part of the coin's design gets cut off, making it an off-center strike. These errors are incredibly rare, and if you happen to find a 1943 Jefferson nickel with this kind of minting flaw, you could have a coin that's worth significantly more than its face value. But let's not forget about the condition of the coin itself. Coins that have been well preserved and remain in uncirculated condition are always worth more. An uncirculated 1943 Jefferson nickel with minimal wear and no signs of being in circulation could be worth thousands of dollars more than a worn, circulated version. As with all rare coins, the better the condition, the higher the price tag. Now, let's talk about the big question: how much is a 1943 Jefferson nickel really worth? Well, if you're lucky enough to find one of these nickels in pristine condition, or if it has one of the rare minting errors mentioned earlier, you could be looking at a coin worth a staggering $76,000. Yes, you heard that right, $76,000 for a single 1943 Jefferson nickel. Of course, not every 1943 nickel will fetch that kind of price, but even a standard version in decent condition can still be worth a significant amount. The key is rarity, error, and condition. Coin collectors have long been hunting for these elusive 1943 Jefferson nickels. Over the years, they've become highly coveted among numismatists, and when one of these rare nickels hits the market, it often generates a lot of excitement. Whether it's because of the historical significance of the metal used, the possibility of minting errors, or simply the scarcity of the coin itself, the 1943 Jefferson nickel continues to be one of the most interesting and valuable nickels ever minted. So, what does all this mean for you? Well, if you're ever sifting through your pocket change or going through a collection of old coins, keep an eye out for the 1943 Jefferson nickel. And if you do happen to find one, take a moment to really inspect it. Check for any mint errors, pay attention to the condition, and make sure it's the silver-colored version that's made with the special wartime metal mix. If you think you found one, don't just let it slip away, get it appraised by a professional to see how much it might be worth. Who knows? You could be sitting on a treasure that's worth $76,000. Coin collecting is all about finding those hidden gems, and the 1943 Jefferson nickel could be one of them. Thanks for joining me today to learn about this incredible piece of history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future coin discoveries. Keep hunting, and happy collecting.